Welcome to It Starts Within, a podcast from Platinum Performance, where we'll dive into the health challenges faced by veterinarians and horse owners alike. Join us for inspiring stories about the latest advancements in equine care, treatments, and comebacks. You'll hear interviews with elite competitors, innovative researchers, and the veterinarians that devote their lives to horses and the humans that love them. At Platinum Performance, we know the power of nutrition starts within. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am Jessie Bengoa, and today I have a guy with me who is a longtime friend of Platinum, so much so that many of us here go way back with him to his college days at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, more years ago than I care to admit at this particular moment. And I am talking about professional reining and ranch riding trainer Bud Lyon of Bud Lyon Performance Horses in Whitesboro, Texas. So welcome, Bud. Great to have you here, my friend.
Jesse, I'm glad we could do it.
Right? Good to see your face now that you are way down. Now that you're way down in Texas, I feel like that's been quite a while actually now. But no, it's really good to get together for the podcast and kind of give everybody a little bit of an inside look into our friend Bud and all that is your world. So today we're going to be digging into Bud's program, his rise to the top, and we'll also have the opportunity to kind of get a little bit of an inside look into the world of ranch riding, which has gained this massive momentum in three very large associations. So those, of course, being the American Paint Horse Association, or APHA, the American Quarter Horse Association, or AQHA, and the National Snaffle Bit Association, or NSBA. So there's a whole lot of acronyms for you to digest, but it's a big deal. And I feel like not a whole lot of people in the wider horse world might totally understand, what is ranch riding. So we'll get into all the things. And, Bud, I kind of want to kick it off with giving us the deets and starting a little bit further back. You're a Southern California guy originally, right? You keep that quiet in Texas. And you showed as a kid. Kind of take us back to the beginning and your intro into the horse world and how you kind of got started there before you migrated up to San Luis Obispo and Cal Poly.
Yeah, so I call California home, and I genuinely enjoyed growing up there. I think it was a fantastic place to grow up as a kid, and my family relocated there in 1986, and we came from the South where my parents were born and raised. I have said this, on other podcasts, but I think, my dad was always the horse guy. My mom was kind of the hostage of the family. And so she was the non-horse enthusiast, but she was a great horse show mom. She was always very supportive of what my sister and I wanted to do. But my dad really led the charge. And I think in some ways that relocation to Southern California sort of exacerbated his commitment and interest to the horse industry. I think that, he grew up showing horses at the local level and doing open shows and things like that. And, he had kind of introduced us to it before we got to California. But when we got there, there were so many other activities and options for kids, and I think a lot of that he couldn't relate to or didn't necessarily understand that culture. But he certainly understood the horses, and there was a 4-H farm not far from where we lived. And so as soon as he discovered that, I think he looked at that and said, I don't really know a whole lot about surfing and skateboarding and things like that, but I do know what that is. And so let's go that way. We're going to go that way as a family and do that. And of course, that's the direction we gravitated, and my sister and I showed, in the small shows and as we were kids, and then it just sort of developed from there.
Where were you in Southern California?
I grew up in Orange County, so we were in Irvine for the most part, right on the Newport Beach line, and not a lot of opportunity to have horses in your backyard in Orange County. So we were lucky to have that 4-H farm that was that close. It was right there on the edge of the UCI campus and literally right across the street from where I went to high school at University High School. So when I was in high school, I could go to football practice in the afternoon, and then I could walk across the street and hop the fence and across the pasture and go take care of the horses and ride a little. And so it was really the best of both worlds. And I think as I got to a certain point, my sister got to a certain point, my dad recognized that we had a commitment to the horses and a passion for it, and that it was time to maybe double down and take it a little bit more seriously. So we started doing the regional AQHA shows and the Youth World Championships, which at that time was in Fort Worth, Texas, and then we graduated into the reining and started doing the NRHA events and whatnot. So it was a process, and I really actually enjoyed living in California and having the horses. So it was great for me.
Talk about the ultimate. I mean, where you grew up is it's not ugly, folks. It's not ugly down there. The weather doesn't suck. Uh,
For sure, for
I mean,
sure.
if you watched, what was that? Was it MTV, the Laguna Hills show forever? It
Yeah,
was like
right.
great A drama, but it was kind of right in your backyard down in that area.
Yeah, we were I think literally a 10-minute drive to the beach from our house, and so lots of options for kids, lots of activities. You could literally surf in the morning and go snow skiing in the afternoon at the local mountains, and in between, you could ride some horses if you were in our family.
Half of America is hating you right now, but it was showing horses with a real good tan, Bud Lyon. So nice job. Nice job. I feel like on podcasts, isn't it supposed to be like, this pull yourself up by your bootstraps story and talk to me about the adversity of your childhood? And so we've got to skip all that with Bud Lyon, thankfully.
Well, I will tell you, we were very fortunate, to have those opportunities, but my folks weren't the kind of parents that could afford, the expensive horses, and so my parents bought what they could afford, and we showed what we had, and that was not necessarily the best horse, or even the second or third or fourth or fifth best horse. We did get very fortunate towards the end of my youth career. We found a horse in a backyard that my trainer at the time, Todd Crawford, who's an NRCHA Hall of Famer,
Yeah, he's
found.
okay.
Yeah, he one day he's going to make a name for
Yeah,
himself.
yeah. He'll be big someday.
But Todd was my trainer at that time, and he found us this little mare in the back some guy's backyard, and we didn't give a ton of money for it, but it worked out to be a huge blessing, and so we were very fortunate in that respect, and that sort of catapulted us to the next level. But that was pure luck. So I won't say that I had a rough upbringing, but I will say that nothing was handed to us, and we weren't the kind of family that could afford the six-figure horses. That's for sure.
It's funny. I feel like that's a running theme. When I talk to all of these amazing top writers, we all kind of grew up, not that I'm an amazing top writer, but similar, we all grew up that way in the way that you had to be scrappy, and so many of the people that I get to talk to on here are the same way. You think that everybody started a certain way because they're at a certain level now, but certainly that is not the case in the majority of those stories. And I think it makes for scrappy people, and dedicated writers.
Yeah, I don't, I would never cast judgment on anybody who had other opportunities, and I think that there's value in everything, and it's what you make of those opportunities that matter. But I do think too that there's something to be said for having to figure it out and make the best of what you have, and try to overcome some trials and tribulations with horses that are maybe not as talented as what you're competing against, or some of your competitors that might have a perceived advantage, and I do think that will pay dividends down the road for a lot of kids, and it's hard to see that in the moment sometimes, and but I do think that there is probably a common denominator amongst a lot of professionals, regardless of discipline, that yeah, those of us that weren't handed something, that we had to make do with what we had, and I think that that becomes something that is a foundation and a driving force later on in your professional career when you go that direction.
It might help you work on your humbleness, I guess. It keeps you a very humble person.
Well, yeah, I again, I mean, I think that there's value in all kinds of scenarios, and having really nice horses, gives you the opportunity to feel what the ultimate goal is. So I would never, disparage that. But I also think that particularly maybe from a showmanship standpoint in the arena, learning to ride on horses that are a little limited in ability or that maybe have some behavioral issues. I think that really teaches you a lot of life lessons, and it teaches you how to be a better showman so that, when you get a little further down the road, if you are fortunate enough to have some of those horses that are a little bit more talented, you really have a good skill set to fall back on because you've shown some that were a little tricky or that, just didn't have that extra oomph. And so it becomes a blessing in disguise sometimes.
Yeah, completely. Horses are the great equalizer. Anyone who's spent any time around horses knows that whether it's a horse that's bred to the nines or not, it's a lot to do with the partnership between horse and rider and how you pilot that horse. And so regardless, I love your point, whether it's somebody who's riding, per se, really, really nice horses or not, it is the great equalizer. And you can't ride the papers is one of my favorite, you can't win on the papers alone. So
Well,
um,
even the best horse in the class has a bad day sometimes, that's part of it. And I think that there is a lot of truth in, saying that those horses, they're not robots most of the time. And so it is, it does leave for that part of the equation that you can't really account for.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I love that, and I love that you had an amazing support system in your parents and kind of that foundation where you were a born and bred horseman, which is really cool that that ended up going on to be such a huge part of your life later. And in between there, between then and now, you headed north to Cal Poly, where, like I said, a few of us here at Platinum were there kind of around the same time-ish. Did
Mhm.
you take the horse thing with you through school up there, like through Quarter Horse Enterprise or any of those projects up there? Was that a part of your life during college or was it a hiatus?
No, at the beginning of my tenure at Cal Poly, I certainly participated in some of those projects and some of those programs. When I got to be about 13 years old, my dad, I think really just wanted to get me out of the house for the summer. So he would start volunteering my services as a helper to some professional horse trainers in the area. And I'd like to think that this was a well thought out plan, that he was, trying to cultivate my skill set. And maybe there was a semblance of truth to that. But I also think I was a teenage boy and he probably just wanted to get me out of the house for a while. And so, every summer he would send me or line something up for me to go spend some time and kind of do an unpaid apprenticeship with, a professional trainer in the area. And that summer after I graduated from high school, I went to Arizona and I spent time with Randy Paul, who ended up becoming my employer later on down the road. And at that time, Craig Schmersel was Randy's assistant. And so, Craig's obviously got a big presence in the reining industry now. And so I spent a summer living with Craig and riding with Randy and his barn. And I remember, I had a fantastic experience. And I thought, at the end of that summer, Craig made the offhand comment that, if I wanted a job, he would bet that Randy would give me one. And I was all excited. And I called my dad and I said, "Hey, Craig thinks that I could have a job working for Randy if I want one. Isn't that cool?" And my dad I remember it was dead silent on the other end of the phone. And, I'm supposed to go to Cal Poly and start in a couple of weeks. And he just it starts laughing. He's like, "No, son." He's like, "You go ahead and pack up and come on home. You're going to college." So it was kind of a running joke, I think, a little bit for a while in my family because I was kind of sulking a little bit and wasn't sure I wanted to go to school after this, incredible summer I had had. But once I got there, I fell in love with that place, and who doesn't? I mean, as well as I do, that's a very special place, and not just the campus and the culture there, but the geographic area itself is probably my favorite place in the entire world. So, I got there, they had the horse program. I was involved in that for a while. At that point in time, when we had, a break from school or summer break or whatever, I would skip up to Northern California and go ride with Don Murphy, who, is also, Hall of Famer and known as the horse trainer's trainer these days. And so I got to spend a couple summers there. Went back to the AQHA World Show one fall with Don, and took a quarter off of school, did kind of an internship through Cal Poly, and then was lucky enough to win the amateur reining at that time. And so when I came home from there, or excuse me, when I came back from that experience, I was probably just a little burned out and been ready for a break. And so that last couple of years at Cal Poly, I didn't do a whole lot with the horse program there, but certainly I was in that orbit with everybody else, and really enjoyed the experience and appreciate the program. And we didn't have the luxury of these amazing facilities that Cal Poly has now at
Right?
their
That place is very
uh,
snazzy now. Very
I'm not
snazzy.
sure how I got the short straw on that draw, but it seems like these days it's a pretty cushy gig to be part of the equine unit up there at Cal Poly. Last time I went, I took my wife there to show her around a couple years ago, and pretty impressive what's going on up there these days. I hope those students know how good they have it compared to what we did.
Oh man, for those of you listening who are not familiar with Cal Poly, it's a fantastic, well, we're kind of biased. I'll preface it with that. Okay. We're both Mustangs, but it's a fantastic university in California, right on the Central Coast. Again, like 10 minutes from the ocean, mountains, ocean, horse country, cattle country, vineyards. It's spectacular, but it really is rooted in agriculture because California, as a lot of non-Californians don't know, is predominantly agriculture, the entire interior of the state. So there's a lot of agriculture and focus on horses and livestock production and that type of thing that goes through that school. So those of us that kind of grew up that way and were interested in it, it's the mecca. It's an amazing place to be. So I think that's great, and it kind of helps shape, the careers that we go on to have in that world. So pretty neat.
Yeah, it was so fun because, I met so many people there who were not just friends, but also had, equine interest, and who went on to have careers in the equine industry, in some form or fashion, whether it was as a horse trainer or, through Platinum. So it really was a unique place to be, and a special time to be there. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Could not agree more. So talk me through those early days, after you did in fact, earn the dad mandated degree. Talk me through talk me through the early days, before you made that transition to Texas, and how that kind of shaped you as a trainer.
Well, just to put a footnote on that point, I said, that it was a running joke in my family. They kind of joked that they had to drag me into college kicking and screaming because I, had decided I wanted to be a horse trainer at the last minute. But after spending a few years there at Cal Poly and on the Central Coast, I decided I did not want to leave. And so the joke is they drugged me into college kicking and screaming, and then had to drag me out of there kicking and screaming. But I
I feel
think,
like that our listeners should know that that actually is a very well-known fact about Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is there are more sixth-year seniors at that college
right.
than I think
Yeah.
any other college in the States. It's pretty hard to leave that place. So
Yeah.
many people don't for a inappropriately long period of time.
Right. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I could have finished up in 4 years, but I looked at that and said, why would I do that to myself? And I drug out those last few credits for a whole nother school year just so I could stick around a little longer. But I think, isn't it still or maybe, I don't know if it's still a thing, but at the time it felt like it was a thing where, graduates from Cal Poly would take, very, low paying remedial jobs just to have a reason to stick around the Central Coast after, spending all this time and money getting a degree from Cal Poly. You've got guys who are engineered majors who are, working at a fast food restaurant for a little while just so that they can kind of stick around that area. So that's definitely a thing, or at least it was when I was there. But as you probably know, I mean, when I applied to Cal Poly, I was, 17 years old, and I had very little idea what I wanted to do with my life for the next 4 years, much less, the next day. I put down, animal science on the application, and at that time, I don't think there wasn't a choice to be undeclared or undecided or general studies or anything like that. Like they wanted to know, and so I thought to myself, well, I don't know what I want to do, but I might want to be, I love the horses. I might want to be a vet, maybe we'll go the pre-vet route. And so, I listed that as my major and was accepted. And when I got there, it didn't take me long to realize, okay, I really like being around the horses and riding them more than I like doctoring them and the whole medicine aspect of it. I think at that point I probably knew that vet school was not on the cards for me, and that I wanted, to go back and revisit the idea of being a horse trainer professionally, and was going to probably segue into an assistant position working for some guys, and just see where it went for me. And I really had no idea at that time, if I had what it took to go that route, or if it was something that I was going to be, ultimately the direction that my life went. But I knew I was going to try it. So when I got out of school, I sent out some resumes, and by that time, Craig had left Randy's program and started his own business. And Craig offered me a job, and I spent some time working for Craig. And then Randy had an opening, and I moved over to Scottsdale, and I spent 7 years working for Randy in Scottsdale, and had a great experience there. I got to be part of a top-notch program. And at that time, Randy was the head trainer for Rancho Cerrillo, which is, what now, Andrea's flagship program. And so it was just a really fun experience. It was a lot of work, and, a lot of long hours and low pay, but, I certainly received an education in all things horse training. And so, I left Cal Poly and went right into the performance horse industry, and it was kind of sink or swim.
You were gainfully employed post-college. That's a big deal, though, low pay or not.
Oh, yeah, gainfully is an interesting way to
You use
describe.
air quotes around that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was employed, living paycheck to paycheck for sure. But that was the nature of the industry, and I knew that going into it. So again, I think that um, what I was doing is really, I went to college and received an education from Cal Poly, and then I went to college again. I went to horse training college and received another education. And the first time I paid Cal Poly, and the second time someone paid me. And so it wasn't a ton of money. I certainly didn't get rich doing it, but it allowed me a stepping stone to start my own business and go forward from there. And I think that that's all you can ask for in some respects.
Give you your foundation, it's paid you in life experience. That's
Yeah.
that's that's almost like money, sometimes a little more valuable in your line of work. And I love it, Bud, because people say, whenever I talk to a bunch of veterinarians, right? Like all these amazingly talented, brilliant people. And I always ask them, like, what would you tell young people who are horse people and they're maybe considering going into veterinary medicine or something to do in the horse industry? And they all say the same thing. And it's all, about who you know and your mentors and surrounding yourself with great people. And it sounds like that's something that really you have in spades, which is to your, a testament to you and who you are. So I love that. So you got to work for more of the very best who have since gone on and, in your words, made a name for themselves a little bit. They're doing okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and after that, was it after that that you transitioned to Texas and decided to go out on your own? Talk me through that process.
Well, that was not something that was ever really on my radar, to be honest with you. And, Texas has been great to me. I've been here since 2008 now, but, I spent, you know, from 1986 until 2008, in the western part of the United States, and that felt like home to me, and that's where I spent my formative years, and so I kind of felt like a West Coast guy. And when I worked for Craig and Randy and those guys, and had spent time as a youth and an amateur traveling back to Texas and Oklahoma for various reasons, competitions and whatnot, I got a you know um, seemingly a front row seat for what was going on in this part of the country and with this industry. And it's certainly the mecca for the Western performance horse world. And so, but it just, to me, it was not something that I ever thought I was going to do as far as a relocation plan. And that's what I get for, saying never, because I certainly ended up here and I've been here since 2008. But really, I would say the catalyst for that was that at the end of 2007, I made the decision that I was going to start my own business. And, I had worked for Randy for 7 years and loved, every minute of that. But it got to a point where it felt like it was just time for the next chapter. And so I made the decision I was going to start my own business. And Randy was kind enough to offer to let me stay right there at Rancho Cerrillo and open my doors and hang my shingle out. And I did, and it grew relatively quickly. Within a very short period of time, I had 16, 17 horses in training. They were all young horses, which is pretty typical, I think, of a lot of assistant horse trainers, or at least it was, then. But um, they were 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and so it was, January of 2008, and I've got a lot of young horses, and things are growing very quickly, and it felt like we were on our way. And then I had a little bit of an accident, and a 2-year-old flipped over and shattered my right arm, which was obviously problematic because it's really hard to start 2-year-olds and ride green 3-year-olds when you only have one hand. It required quite a bit of reconstruction and surgery and whatnot. And, there was some healing issues for a while there. So essentially, it put me out of business. And, I thought, well, man, here I am. I've just started this business. I've been an assistant for 7 years. I paid my dues. I feel like I'm ready for the next step, and things seemed like they were going great. And now here I am back to square one. And I had a friend who had just relocated back to North Texas at the time, and had left that Scottsdale area. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I know you're, recovering from your injury, and, you don't have a lot going on. Would you want to haul some stuff back to Texas for me?" And so I agreed to, since I really didn't have anything else to do and needed the money. So, I jumped in the truck and drove out to Texas and got there, and they said, "Hey, you don't really have anything to run back to. Why don't you hang out for a few days?" And so I did. And in that time, somebody mentioned, they said, there's a lady down there she lives in Dallas, but she's got a real nice place in Aubrey, Texas. And she's looking for kind of a resident trainer, ranch manager kind of a situation. And, you should go talk to her. She's got some nice horses and got a very nice, facility and whatnot. So I went, and she offered me the job. And, it seemed like it was, a great safety net. And at that time, so I took the job, but I took the job quite truthfully, thinking, this is not going to be the last stop for me. I'm still feel like I've got West Coast roots, and they're calling me back home, but I'm going to do this for a little while until, we find solid footing again. And then, we'll make our way back out to Arizona or California, whatever. But then bear in mind, this is 2008. And so I took the job in July, and I relocated in August. And by September, the economy was, falling apart. And, by Christmas time, those people that had given me the job and had the facility were seeing their life savings slip away. And like a lot of people were, and they said, we can't do it. We're going to sell the place and downsize. And so, I picked up and moved to Texas and relocated my life here. And then shortly afterwards, it seemed like, everything was kind of, upside down. And, certainly a lot of people had it a lot worse than I did. So I don't want to complain, but that's what got me to Texas, which is, kind of an unfortunate series of circumstances. And, there was a lot of concern on my end about whether or not I should stay, but thankfully I did, because not too long after that, I connected with my wife, my now wife, I should say.
Good job, Todd.
And,
Call her current.
yeah, my only wife, just to be clear, my only wife. But
Anyone who
but
has met Kim or seen Kim knows that Bud married over his skis, so he's not doing any better than her. So we're good.
yeah, no, I mean, I got a heck of a leg, because I definitely outkicked that coverage. So, um, but yeah, Kim and I reconnected, and for a guy who said he was never going to move to Texas, I've been here, what, 16 years now, and I'm on my second piece of property, and we've definitely solidified some roots here. So that's the short version of the story.
So you were a bona fide Texas local, and
Ooh, I don't know about
whoa,
that.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I would say I am a guest of the state of Texas, and but no, Texas has been great to me. The horse industry here has been great to me, and I think anybody who's been back here, and spent time here knows that how many resources and how many valuable upsides there are to being in the horse industry in the North Texas, Southern Oklahoma region. I think there's really good pockets of horse communities everywhere in this country, and that includes California and Arizona and places on the East Coast. But this seems to be the epicenter, and we've got all our major events here, and you've got all the big breeding facilities, and I think the cost of living and the ability to raise and horses and be a professional horse trainer is so user friendly compared to some other areas that are a little bit more cost prohibitive, that it's really kind of like I said, the epicenter of our Western performance horse industry. So I've
100%.
got zero complaints. It's been great to me.
You are a resident guest of the great state of Texas.
Welcome.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, a cool thing about your career in particular is that you started in the reining world, right? And you trained under all of these amazing reiners and reined cow horse guys, and you have such a foundation in that. But your career has been an evolution, like so many horse people. And you ended up transitioning, much more heavily into ranch riding. And I want to kind of get into that because it turned out it was a really good idea, but it wasn't your really good idea. It was Kim's really. So back to Kim and
Yeah.
his really cool wife. And so she, I want to hear a little bit about how Kim and Electric Chickalina kind of changed your stars a little bit in the horse world, gave you, again, a very humbling experience in your first go around. And tell us that story a little bit about how ranch riding came to be a part of Bud Lyon's performance horses.
Yeah, you really did your research on this one, Jesse.
But I stalked you to no end, brother.
So yes, you're correct. I grew up doing, as I said, the 4-H shows, the local shows as a kid, the open shows, and we did a little bit of everything. I mean, we did showmanship and halter, and we did Western pleasure, and then I got into the AQHA all around events, and we did that same thing. We did trail and Western riding and things like that. I started doing the reining. I think I got my first reining horse somewhere around 1991, something like that, 1990 maybe. But and that sort of opened the door to a newfound passion, I think, in the reining, and again, we started doing that with Todd Crawford, and then at that point, Todd was segueing into um, the cow horse stuff himself, and was beginning his journey to become one of the all-time greats in the cow horse stuff. And so my background as a youth and as an amateur rider started with doing all kinds of different events, and then we started to primarily focus on the reining and the cow horse a little bit. Those guys that I've all mentioned, Randy, Todd, Don, of course, were huge players in the cow horse space, and in the reining as well. And so all of that was a huge influence on me and laid the foundation for what I thought my career was going to be, which um, you know really probably was, for me, I felt like, I liked the reining and I wanted to do the reining and the cow horse. I think the cow horse came a little bit more naturally to me in some respects, as an assistant. And that's kind of truly the direction I thought my career was going to go. When I got to Texas, I was just trying to survive, and '08 was crazy, and things were happening, left and right, things were folding and people were just trying to survive, and I was certainly, a product of that as well. And so at that time, I'm in Texas and just trying to put food on the table, and I just didn't get a lot of people that wanted to send me cow horses. The NRCHA events hadn't fully relocated to the Fort Worth area at that time. I think maybe the Celebration of Champions had moved, the world's greatest, but the snaffle bit and the derby and the stakes and everything were still in other states. And so there was certainly a quality group of professionals, and a burgeoning affiliate program for the cow horse in the Texas and Oklahoma area, but it wasn't what it is today. And the people who sent me horses that I, were relying on me to train those horses were mostly interested in the reining. And I liked the reining as well, and so my career started to go, gravitate away from the cow horses and go more towards the reining side of the industry. And I really thought, okay, well, this is how things are going to go, and maybe at some point I'll work my way back to the cow horse. But the reining was starting to gain some momentum for me as well. And we you brought up this horse. So this horse, Electric Chicolina, that we have, it's still in my barn today, and I think he's got to be 13 years old this year, by Smart Chicolina. We got him as a 3-year-old, and he had so many great things about him, Jesse, that I thought was going to make him a superstar for the reining, except for one very important part, which is he could not slide very well at all. And I
Trainers were
tried.
proved it. I mean, not a big deal in the reining at all, right?
Yeah, I mean, it turns out you kind of have to have that. He could do a whole lot of stuff. He had, could turn. He was beautiful to look at, great mover. But he just didn't have a lot of stop, or he didn't have the stop that we needed to be successful at the highest level. And so, I had this horse and was, maybe trying to force the square peg into the round hole. And at some point I just, got frustrated with it and kind of threw my hands in the air and, kind of kicked him to the back burner. And my wife, Kim, she loved this horse. And, who doesn't like a pretty horse? I mean, he's really, attractive to look at. And so I didn't know anything about the ranch riding or the ranch events really. It just wasn't, on my radar. But Kim had seen some of it and had a friend that wanted to go do it and was looking for a traveling partner. And so Kim asked if she could take that horse and go do it. And I was like, yes, please do something with him, because I am frustrated with him, and we need a little bit of we needed some time apart, this horse and I. um, so Kim started going with a friend and doing these little ranch riding events and ranch versatility shows and whatnot, and she was having a ball doing it, and I was like, great. I was like, this is awesome. Tell me when to show up, and watch and cheer from the back gate, because other than that, I didn't really truthfully want any part of it.
How'd that work out for you, bud?
Well, again, there's a common theme, I think, in this backstory, which is every time I say never, I ultimately end up doing the thing I say I would never do, like move to Texas or do the ranch riding. And so you would think I would learn some life lessons from that. But yeah, I just had a singular focus at the time, which was the reining in that moment, and this other stuff, was kind of burgeoning, but wasn't my passion, wasn't something I was necessarily familiar with. Quite frankly, I hadn't even really watched it. I wouldn't say I prejudged it, but I would also say, it just wasn't something that I was inspired to go do. So in the process of Kim doing it with this stud we had, she gets qualified for the AQHA World Show in the amateur ranch riding, and subsequently on accident gets qualified for the senior ranch riding. And she comes to me and says, Playboy's qualified for the senior ranch riding. Do you want to show him at the World Show? And I said,
And you said
I said,
never.
absolutely not. I do not. No, that seems like a terrible idea. I have never done the class. I've barely even watched the class. I've never attempted it. At that time, there was a guy who lived not far from us who was kind of at the pinnacle of that discipline. And I said, why don't you go ask him if he'd like to show the horse? Because that seems, like a good idea to me. The horse is qualified, and if you can get the guy who's supposed to be, the hottest thing going at it to show him, then how could you go wrong? And so Kim did, and there was an agreement that that was going to happen. And then that gentleman broke his leg, and Kim comes back to me and she says, "Hey, I have bad news. We entered this horse at the World Show, and the entry's non-refundable. He can't show with a broken leg, obviously. So you're up, buddy."
You're up,
And
cowboy. Like,
I was like, ugh, I was so put out. But we went to the World Show, and at the World Show in the preliminaries, showed for the very first time, and was, really just lucky, I think, more than anything. I think the horse was a nice horse, and I think that, we just kind of lucked our way through it, or at least I did. But we ended up, third highest scoring horse in the go around and that year. And then we go to the finals, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself because I was like, this is a piece of cake. I'd never even done it until 2 days ago. And, I was like a 230 something. And, so I'm feeling pretty content and pleased with myself. And then I absolutely got my butt kicked in the finals. I mean, they wiped the floor with me. And so it was at that point that I realized, oh wait, there's a lot more to this than I thought there was, and this is a lot harder than I thought it was. So it definitely gave me an appreciation for it. And it also, ironically, yes, launched my ranch riding career. So.
it's a little harder than you thought it was, and now I might be interested. Who knew? Um,
Well, yeah, we came back the next year, and I tried it again, and it was just the exact same scenario almost. I mean, I was like fifth in the go around the next year, and then I go to into the finals, and I was even worse the next year in the finals than I was the first time I did it. So, then I was really kind of fired up, and it was like, okay, like I got to figure this thing out. Like I don't like being subpar at anything. And I think that, regardless of whether or not I set out to do it or didn't set out to do it, now I'm seeing that it's really challenging, and I don't like being subpar at anything that I commit to. So that was probably a tipping point as well. I think that second year it was like, God, why can't I figure this out? Like, they make it look so easy, but that turns out that was the trick. It's not easy. It's really hard. And those guys that make it look easy are really good at what they do. And so, yeah, that was the springboard for my ranch riding career.
so those two first years in the ranch riding finals really kept your feet on the ground.
That
So
was so bad. So bad.
I'm glad we could go back there, Bud. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
memories with me.
Yeah. This is some trauma I didn't want to revisit, but thanks, Jesse. I'm
You're
having
welcome.
fun.
You're welcome there, my friend. So fast forward, things have evolved again in your career since I feel like there's been a divine plan for your career all the way around because every time you say you're going to do something, want something, live a certain place, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to be like, yeah, that's real cute, Bud Lyon. Let me tell you what's actually going to happen.
Yeah, there's probably some a healthy debate to be had about that. But I think you're probably right. Yeah, I mean and that's probably an analogy for life lessons too, right? Which is that, no matter how much you think you have something figured out or you have a plan, that you better be ready to adapt, because, or at least have a sense of humor, because it definitely might not go that direction. So.
Amen. Amen. So we won't fixate on how terrible you were. Let's go talk about how good you are now. So we'll build you back up. Um, so you've earned a long list, fast forward several years now, you've earned this long list of world championship titles spanning the three associations we talked about. So the APHA, AQHA, the NSBA. And that whole journey kind of really came to the spotlight for you in, was it 2018? So, and that's when you won the AQHA Ranch Riding World Championship, and it was aboard, was it Chick's Dream About Me?
Right, a California horse. Yeah.
So appropriate, Bud Lyon. Bud Lyon and Chick's Dream About Me. I love that. And then in 2020, you came back on Little Trash Talk in the junior division, right? And then again in 2021 in the senior division. So you started to have quite a string of some massive success. So take us through that time, and kind of on to when you rode Gunner Got It Out.
Well, so, I showed that first experience at the World Show was 2016, and then again in 2017. And I think, after 2017 is when I started to get a little bit more serious about it, and I just was like, okay, kind of had one foot in, one foot out, but if I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing it just to prove a point to myself, which is that, I'm going to figure it out. So if I'm
Thank
going to
God
do
you're
it.
stubborn, Bud Lyon. Thank God you're stubborn.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, after 2017, I was like, okay, I gotta actually, like, get in or get out, so to speak. So, in 2018, I had a horse owned by Laura Day, who was in California, and he was a really nice horse that Randy had spent some time showing among some other trainers, and I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to show him in the reining. And we took him and qualified him in the senior ranch riding that year. We showed him at one show one day. He was first under all three judges and got qualified, and then we went back to doing the reining on him. And then when it got close to the world show, then we started to kind of pivot and do the ranch stuff on him. And so, that horse had such a great foundation that Randy had put on him, and that, the reining programs and the cow horse programs promote in general in our industry, that it really made my job very easy, to transition him to the ranch riding. But I will say, I think that I would be remiss if I said that we knew what was going to happen at the World Show that year. I thought that horse had the talent to be a finalist and be, in the top 10. I really had no idea that he was going to do what he did, because, I was still a little green at it, and he was probably a little green at the ranch riding. But in 2018, we make the finals, we go, we show, and that horse set the record at that time, the arena record for the ranch riding, which was a 2:45. So not only did he win the ranch riding that year at the World Show and win by a lot, he also set the arena record. And that was um, it was validating. It was unexpected. It was joyous. It was so many things that, mostly because I think we just didn't envision it happening the way it played out. But that was probably, the next springboard, is that, okay, now, you came back here and showed the first 2 years, and, I wouldn't say I was half-hearted about it, but I would say that it was, I was more of a participant than anything. And now all of a sudden people are talking to me like I know what I'm doing. And I don't know that I really did. I think that I knew a little bit more than I did 2 years earlier, but I also had a horse that, was a really nice horse. And everything just kind of came together, and especially on that night. And now all of a sudden people are looking at me like I'm, some up and comer in this world. And I was like, well, wait, I really was just trying to, figure this deal out just to prove a point to myself. Um, but then all of a sudden people started to want to put horses in training with me just for the ranch events. And that was a market departure from what we had seen previously. I mean, I had a lot of horses that I was taking in training to go do the reining, and then maybe we'd add the ranch stuff to it just to give them something else to do. Or, maybe we'd transition those horses into the ranch events because, they were done being reining horses. But now people were approaching me and asking me to train horses for them specifically for the ranch riding, and only for the ranch riding. They didn't care about the reining, or, it just wasn't their focal point. And so that was sort of a turning point as well. It became like, oh, okay, well, now I've got this other thing that I really, truthfully wasn't super passionate about as I was building a business, but I've got people asking me to do it, and they want to pay me good money to go do it. And so Okay, yeah, we'll go down this road, and it'll be a nice supplementary, supplemental, excuse me, income to the reining part of our business. And it just ended up taking over my business. It really did. And so in 2020, you mentioned Little Trash Talk. I mean, he wins the junior ranch riding, and he sets an arena record. And then that horse had won the prelims, wins the finals in the junior, and then comes back the next year in the senior, wins the prelims of the senior, and wins the finals in the senior ranch riding, which is the toughest division at the AQHA World Show, in my opinion. And I don't think there'd ever been a horse that had done that back to back like that, win the prelims and the finals, in the junior and the senior in back to back years. And so it just sort of snowballed. And every time I thought that, well, this is the plateau that we're going to reach, or this is the ceiling that for this part of my career or my business, something else happened that just took it to another level. And so it really sort of went without me, and I just hung on for dear life.
So you trained and showed, several of these horses that we were just talking about, several of which are superstars in the ranch riding world. Um, but let's talk about one in particular, and that is a 2017 gelding, correct? You found as a 3-year-old, and you've trained and shown I mean, the best I can describe it is total stardom. I mean, this horse is something very special. And what I love also is this horse has an interesting connection as well, because you did this with Leslie Lang, who is this tremendous horsewoman and who's known throughout the horse world, particularly in the AQHA. She's just incredible. And so, and a longtime friend of ours here at Platinum too. So I love that Leslie is such a big part of this story too. And she was an old friend of yours also. And as the story goes, correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie comes to you to look for a horse. So, first of all, I want to hear about the pressure that's involved when you have to look for a horse for Leslie Lang, because has to be some there. No pressure. She kind of knows what she's talking about. And the horse that I'm referencing is Sumac going to be flashy, aka Romeo. And this horse is a stunner. So aside from being extremely successful, under your tutelage, this horse is a beautiful horse. And so you found the one. You succeeded for Leslie Lang, uh, and you have been able to just take this horse to the level that he was obviously destined to be at. And I love that. And she was named the AQHA Most Valuable Professional, but now you've taken this horse and you have racked up. But to be very honest, I have the list of accolades here in front of me, but it would take the next like 20 minutes to go through all of them. So I want to know about Romeo. I want to know how the story unfolded, and I want you to kind of share with myself and our audience, some of the things that the two of you have earned together in the arena, because it's been something to watch.
Well, so thank you. Yes. Here's what I will say. I had known of Leslie for a lot longer than I actually knew Leslie on a personal level. And when I got involved in the ranch events, Leslie was also playing in that discipline. And Leslie's had a long, career and been so successful, and she's so well respected by so many people. She's been an NSBA president. She's been, she's an AQHA judge. I mean, she's, part owner in a stock contracting company for, the rodeo industry. So she's just been there and done it all, and, is so well, highly regarded. But I truly didn't know Leslie very well, and until I started doing the ranch classes. And we would speak and make small talk and conversation at the horse shows and stuff, in the warm-up pen and whatnot, as two professionals are wont to do. But um I was really sort of caught off guard, because she came to me. I feel like maybe we were in Tulsa or somewhere, but she came to me and said, I'd be interested in finding a young horse, a junior horse or a prospect, So if you come across something that, let me know. And I just assumed in the moment that she just wanted me to kind of be an extra set of eyes and ears for her, and, give her a heads up if I saw something that I thought, was interesting. And I don't know, a couple weeks or a couple months go by, and she brings it up in conversation again, and I said, okay, I'll keep my eyes open. And she said, well, just to be clear, I would be open to leaving it in training with you if you found something that you liked. And
Like, oh, okay.
it's, okay, this is different. So this is a little, I just thought you just, wanted somebody, to kind of keep their eyes open for you. I said, but this is a different dynamic here. And I was equally flattered and terrified by the prospect of having to pick something out for Leslie, that I was going to have to vouch for and try to make work. And I'm sure there are other people, who, would be much more steely about that situation, but not me. I mean, just truth being told, I mean, I was like, oh geez, I was like, I don't want to miss. And you never, as a trainer and, as somebody picking out a prospect, you never want to miss for anybody. You don't want to make a bad buy or make a bad judgment call, or, and that sometimes just happens. It's out of your control and nobody's got the crystal ball. But I certainly didn't want to, put my name on the line for something for Leslie that didn't, work out. And so it took a long time to find, Romeo. I think I looked for a year or maybe a year and a half, and, and I didn't send her very many that I felt good about. But fortunately, we were at the World Show that year, and, a fellow reining horse trainer, Garth Brown, started messaging me and telling me that he had a horse that he thought I needed to see. And I wouldn't say I was dismissive of that. I think I was just in the moment. I was tied up at the World Show and had a lot right in front of me. And quite truthfully, it was getting to the point in my career where a lot of reining horse trainers were coming to me and telling me they had a horse they thought I needed to look at. And I was appreciative of that, but it certainly was, a lot of them weren't quite the right fit or whatever. So, admittedly, I probably glossed over Garth's first, few text messages, and thankfully he did not quit messaging me because he sent me videos, without me having responded to his previous text messages. And I saw this video and I went, oh, wait, I got to look at this horse. So I said, Garth, I'm tied up at the World Show, but I've got a few days in between the World Show and the start of the NRHA Futurity. I'll be home and I could try him then. And Garth, to his credit, he was great about it. He said, great. He said, tell you what, he said, I got to go run some errands. He said, I'll just drop him off at your house on Tuesday and leave him there. And, you just try him as long as you want, do whatever you need to do. And, call me and I'll pick him up on my way back home. Which is pretty unusual when you're horse shopping. Not often does that type of scenario come up where someone's just like, yeah, I'm just going to drop this horse off and, I'll be gone for a few hours and, do whatever you want. But
You have a trusting faith, Bud. You have a trusting faith.
yeah, I guess. But I will say, I mean, it didn't take me very long. It took me about 10 minutes of riding that horse. And I was like, okay, this is the kind of horse that we've been looking for. And, I called Leslie and I said, I think I found one. And, I said, he checks all the boxes, that we look for and that I look for. And he has these intangibles that you cannot train into him. Some horses just either have these certain things, these abilities, or they don't. And as a trainer, I always feel like I can improve on a lot of things, but I can't completely manufacture something that wasn't there to begin with. And with this horse, he just had, a very special blend of talent and ability and, mindset and, foundation. And, so again, that's not to say that I knew that anything was a certainty, but I certainly felt like this was, one of, if not the only horse that I was willing to, send Leslie's way and say, hey, I think we need to pre-purchase this horse. And I think you need to wire the money right away if he passes that pre-purchase, because this seems like the kind of horse that we want to roll the dice on if we're going to roll the dice on any of them. So, Thankfully, she did. I mean, she never swung a leg over the horse. She never saw the horse in person. I don't even know how long she owned it before she saw it for the first time in person, but I can guarantee you it was, it was probably 3 or 4 months before she even saw it in person. And, I am so grateful for Leslie for having the confidence in me to go look on her behalf, and for having the confidence in me to start that process. And she's turned into not only an amazing owner to work with, but a valued mentor and a trusted friend. So it's been a really special journey.
Yeah, and she's a very special lady. So I think that that's amazing that that worked out that way. And I love to hear that story because good things should happen to good people, as both of you are. And I love.
Oh, pulled another one. Yes.
So back to Romeo, and we're gonna really dig into him because he just is a big deal, and with you as his jockey has become so synonymous with the ranch riding and such a winner in that area. So I've heard Romeo has a total personality in the barn, but then when he goes in the show pen, he is like down to business, much like Bud Lyon, right? So I want to hear about the horse himself, and then also, you two are magic in the ranch riding. You've won a ton together. And there's been some big things that have happened, recently with the two of you. And that has a lot to do with the Ranch Horse Triple Crown Challenge, which is him being the first ever to really win that title. It's a fairly new title that's out there, and Romeo is the poster boy and will go down in history as the first one to have ever won that. So talk to me about the horse himself, and talk to me about what you all have been able to accomplish together. And Bud Lyon is not one that is comfortable bragging on himself, but I think our listeners are going to want to know what the two of you have been able to do together.
Well, yeah, I'm probably not very comfortable talking about my accomplishments, but I'll brag on that horse all day long because, again, he's just very, very special. And I know that sounds biased, but I don't use that word lightly. And I have been very fortunate to have a barn full of extremely nice horses, come through my life, and especially with the success that we've been fortunate to have in the range classes. But I don't have another one, in Romeo's category. And uh, you know, you mentioned his personality. Here's the thing, Jesse. That horse is not just, he's a barn favorite for everybody. I think, that works for me, for my wife, for, a lot of the other clients. And it's not because of what he's won so much of, because, but it's also because he has this personality that he's just a very loving, personable horse. He's got some idiosyncrasies like all the good ones have. He gets out of his halter every chance he gets. I mean, he's a freaking Houdini. So, we have to continually come up with new and inventive ways to keep him, in his halter when we need him to stay tied, whether it's in the trailer, in the stall, on the walker, in the wash rack, whatever. He's just so talented at slipping out of his halter. He never really goes anywhere. He never really leaves. He may wander around and see if he can find some snacks, but he's
Just because he can. Just because he can.
he, he's determined to get out of his halter, and he's really, really good at it. Um, he's loves to sleep. I think that's his favorite activity, is sleeping, and he groans and snores. He's the loudest snoring horse I've ever heard. It sounds like there's a freaking chainsaw going off in my barn when that horse is sleeping. He wants he wants to be your friend. Most of the time he wants to be in your pocket. And I certainly did not teach him that. I think that's his personality. But I would also venture to guess that a lot of the people that work for me have encouraged that behavior. So that's not my favorite thing about him as a horse trainer, but to your point, he is one way in the barn and in the stall, and he's a different way under saddle and when we go show. And for a horse that I think was maybe a little consistent at the very beginning of his athletic career, as a reining horse and even as a ranch horse. Consistency has kind of become his hallmark, and that's allowed us to be able to have the opportunity to go on and win some of these things that he's been able to accomplish.
I feel like I have not gotten the opportunity, the immense pleasure of meeting Romeo, but he loves to sleep and looks for snacks at all costs. So I feel like we would get along really well. I
Yeah,
respect
yeah, you guys might be cosmic soulmates. I
that.
mean,
100%. Got to work on my snoring, but other than that,
yeah.
uh, I think that's really cool. And I love the ones with a great personality. And those idiosyncrasies, like you said, are kind of a hallmark of the really good horses, but not all of them are real sweet like that. So there's some really successful horses that are real jerks out there. So I love to hear that Romeo is such a good guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think all the great ones are a little weird in some respects, and this one just happens to be weird in a kind of a fun, kind of a quirky, kind of a way, non-malicious kind of a way. Let's put it that way. There's definitely the other kind of. I've had some of those too. So, but
Non-malicious weirdness. We're big fans. All the great ones definitely have a little weirdness.
yeah.
So maybe the people and the horses, whatever. But now. So Bud, as we kind of, go through Romeo's story and all that, it's amazing to hear. It's amazing to see what you've accomplished. But there's kind of a common thread in your barn and with your program, you and Kim, really. Um, and you guys are known for finite attention to detail with your horses and taking immense care of your horses and paying attention to all these little things that add up to all these huge things that you've been able to accomplish. So tell me why you are so meticulous on those pieces, the difference that you feel like it makes. And also, obviously, we know Bud Lyon in the world of nutrition. So why is that a piece of your puzzle as well?
Well, I think my my hypothesis is that every great horseman I have ever been around has been a little bit of a perfectionist. And I think that's something that, is in my core as well. You can call it OCD, you can call it, hyper vigilant, you can call it whatever you want. But I think for me, it's a little bit of a sense of perfectionism. And we we love our horses and we rely on them, to be our partners in the show pen, and in my case, to provide a service to my customers and provide a living for myself. And so, there's all these facets to what is the primary motivator. But at the end of the day, I think that um, we want our horses to look and feel their best so that they can perform their best. And that certainly includes platinum. And there's a reason why, that I've wanted to be a part of the platinum brand for so long now. And, it starts with the product itself. It's also the people who are involved in the company, and that goes a long way with me. I think that, do I expect my horses can perform if we don't have that attention to detail? I think that it's less likely that they're going to perform at the level which we're expecting and accustomed to. And so the nutrition is a huge part of that. There's no doubt about that. And I don't know of a more comprehensive product line than Platinum's. You know, Again, I mean, I want the best for my horses so that we can leave no stone unturned. And at the end of the day, whether we win or lose, we can look back and say, we did everything we could to try to put ourselves and the horses and the clients in a position to be as successful as we all can be. And so I think there's so many things that go into that, but it's, for me, it's the culture that I have wanted to create in my business and in my program. And, it's a top down um, culture that extends to the people that work for me and becomes infectious with, the clients that keep their horses with me and the amateur and youth riders that, spend their time with us. And so to me, it's just about making sure that those horses are as healthy as they can be, they're as happy as they can be, and they're as well prepared as they can be when it comes time to go compete on them.
I love that. And, for us, relationships matter, people matter. And we are very, very proud to have been a part of your program for any amount of time, but it's been a long time. I mean, it's been really great to be able to have a relationship with you and watch your career evolve and the success that you've had. Because I know I joined Platinum in 2009, and I think you joined Platinum before I joined Platinum. So,
Yeah, yeah. So we were feeding platinum. I was personally feeding platinum products to my own horses when I worked for Randy, in the early 2000s. And then, when I started my own business and went on my own in 2008, Platinum was very gracious and supportive enough to be, I think, my first sponsored, company that I was able to partner with. And so Platinum, took a chance on me when I was really, just at the beginning of my career before we had anything to hang our hat on. And so I will be eternally grateful to Platinum and the people that work there for being willing to take that leap of faith on me. And it's been an awesome ride, and we've grown together, we've evolved together, and I think that hopefully, we can continue to do so in the future.
well, you certainly can't make new old friends, and it matters. And it matters to us. We've all gotten to watch ourselves age together. It's been great.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think watching you guys age has been great. Watching me age, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Keep those compliments coming. I need them. So my last question, Bud, is a part of you that I think is really cool that I want to make sure our listeners get a chance to hear just a little bit about. And that is the fact that Bud Lyon is a real big deal in the show pen. But you really have a passion for coaching non-pros. And that's a big piece of your business, but it wouldn't be a big piece of your business if it wasn't a big piece of your heart, if you didn't really love that aspect of it and you weren't passionate about it. So, we've gotten to know Bud Lyon as the writer through this conversation, but what about Bud Lyon as the coach? And why is that something that you've integrated so deeply into your business, your lifestyle, kind of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I think that I grew up with those mentors and those coaches that we've spoken about, and there were many others that I didn't get a chance to name drop, but they all had an influence and an impact on me. And I always knew that whatever type of business I built, in the equine industry, that I wanted coaching to be part of that. And I really, I do enjoy the coach. I enjoy trying to help people accomplish their goals and in some cases their lifelong dreams, and that's been particularly true with the kids. And I think that it brings me a lot of internal fulfillment to see riders progress and to accomplish the things that they have set out to accomplish. And that's what I think some of those trainers, did for me. And that's what I hope to kind of carry on, and give back to our industry in that way, and to those people, in if I can. And, you know, um, I don't want the conversation to get too heavy, but I think, when I start to think about, what I would like a legacy to be going forward, I certainly want to be respected as a horseman first, but I would love to be respected as the coach, not far behind that. And it's just really important to me to be able to have that interaction with these people who have made it a point to try to better themselves and to accomplish these things that that they're shooting for. And along the way, especially with the kids, I think you learn a lot of life lessons, and I think that's important to me to help kind of shape and mold some of those kids for the better if I can.
Well, I think having an influence like you is really valuable for kids like that, for writers, whether they're adults or kids. And I feel like all of those winnings and all of those accolades, they're going to go down in history, no question, but they're not necessarily the first thing that people remember. They remember how you made them feel. And I think that's a really big deal. And that's a testament to who you are as a writer and a person. And I love that piece of who you are and your business and how you really have touched a lot of people, and I'm sure will continue to do so. So, Bud Lyon, it has been a ride, and I'm so glad that you and I got the chance after all these years to sit down and have a conversation on the podcast and kind of introduce our listeners to who you are, to Kim by proxy, and to the horses in your barn. Um, that together, you guys have just shot to stardom, and it could not have happened to a nicer guy. It's great to see it happen to you. And these horses are something special, and you've played such a major role in making that happen. And we're just, like I said, we're very, very proud to have been along for the ride with you for so long. So thank you for being here with me today, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys so much. And now we can get off the air and you can tell me how you really feel about me.
Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be doing that after I stop recording. So, all honesty here with Bud.
Right.
No, he did great. He did great. And to all of you joining me here today to get an up close look at the man that is Bud Lyon, thank you for being here. And until next time, I'm Jessie Bengoa. Take care, everybody.